Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. It's August 11th, 2021, Bhakti Center in New York, over the internet, and we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. Ninth Canto, Chapter 11, Lord Ramachandra Rules the World. We're going to start with text 26, and we're going to read to the end of the chapter. Okay, so text 26. Ashikta Margam Gandodai Karinam Mada Shiksharai Swaminam Prapta Alokya Matam Vasutaram Ashikta Margam. The streets were sprinkled. Ganda Udai, with perfumed water. Karinam, of elephants. Mara Shikarai, with particles of perfumed liquor. Swaminam, the master or proprietor. Praptam, present. Alokya, seeing personally. Matam, very opulent. Va, either. Sutaram, highly. Eva, as if. Srila Prabhupada's translation. During the reign of Lord Ramachandra, the streets of the capital Ayodhya were sprinkled with perfumed water and drops of perfumed liquor thrown about by elephants from their trunks. When the citizens saw the Lord personally supervising the affairs of the city in such opulence, they appreciated this opulence very much. Srila Prabhupada's purport. We have simply heard about the opulence of Ram Rajya during the reign of Lord Ramachandra. Now here is one example of the opulence of the Lord's kingdom. The streets of Ayodhya were not only clean, but also sprinkled with perfumed water and drops of perfumed liquor, which were distributed by elephants through their trunks. There was no need of sprinkling machines, for the elephant has a natural ability to suck water through its trunk and again throw it out in a shower. We can understand the opulence of the city from this one example. It was actually sprinkled with perfumed water. Moreover, the citizens had the opportunity to see the Lord personally supervising the affairs of the state. He was not a sleeping monarch, as we can understand from his activities in sending his brothers to see the affairs outside of the capital and punish anyone who did not obey the emperor's orders. This is called Digvijay. The citizens were all given facilities for peaceful life, and they were also qualified with appropriate attributes according to Varnashrama. As we have seen from the previous chapter, Varnashrama Gunam Vitan, the citizens were trained according to the Varnashrama system. A class of men were Brahmanas, a class were Vaishyas, a class were Kshatriyas, a class were Vaishyas, and a class were Shudras. Without the scientific division, there can be no question of good citizenship. The king, being magnanimous and perfect in his duty, performed many sacrifices and treated the citizens as his sons. And the citizens, being trained in the Varnashram system, were obedient and perfectly ordered. The entire monarchy was so opulent and peaceful that the government was even able to sprinkle the street with perfumed water, what to speak of other management. Since the city was sprinkled with perfumed water, we can simply imagine how opulent it was in other respects. Why should the citizens not have felt happy during the reign of Lord Ramachandra? All right, we're going to read the rest of this chapter. Is no purports, just going to read the English. The palaces, the palace gates, the assembly houses, the platforms for meeting places, the temples and all such places were decorated with golden water pots and bedecked with various types of flags. Wherever Lord Ramachandra visited, auspicious welcome gates were constructed with banana trees and betel nut trees full of flowers and fruits. The gates were decorated with various flags made of colorful cloth and with tapestries, mirrors, and garlands. Wherever Lord Ramachandra visited, the people approached him with paraphernalia of worship and begged the Lord's blessings. "O Lord," they said, "as you rescue the earth from the bottom of the sea in your incarnation as a boar, may you now maintain it. Thus we beg your blessings. Thereafter, having not seen the Lord for a long time, both men and women, being very eager to see him, left their homes and got up on the roofs of their palaces, being incompletely satiated with seeing the face of the lotus-eyed Lord Ramachandra. They showered flowers upon him. Thereafter, Lord Ramachandra entered the palace of his forefathers. Within the palace were various treasures and valuable wardrobes. The sitting places on the two sides of the entrance door were made of coral. The yards were surrounded by pillars of Vaidurya money. The floor was made of highly polished Marakata money. That means emeralds. Vaidurya money is a multicolored stone. Maybe it's like an opal, I don't know. And the foundation was made of marble. The entire palace was decorated with flags and garlands and bedecked with valuable stones shining with a celestial effulgence. The palace was fully decorated with pearls and surrounded by lamps and incense. The men and women within the palace all resembled demigods and were decorated with various ornaments, which seemed beautiful because of being placed on their bodies. Lord Ramachandra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, chief of the best learned scholars, resided in that palace with his pleasure potency, Mother Sita, and enjoyed complete peace. Without transgressing the religious principles, Lord Ramachandra, whose lotus feet are worshipped by devotees in meditation, enjoyed with all the paraphernalia of transcendental pleasure for as long as needed. Wow, what a description of opulence. Going back to the first verse, Ashikta Margam Gandodai, Harinamada Shikarai, Swaminim Praptama Lokya Matamba Sutaram Niva. So definitely extraordinary opulence. These descriptions of opulence very much remind us of the opulence that we find in the heavenly planets. And to some extent, the opulence that we find in the spiritual world. So this may be the situation of great opulence in the reign of Lord Ramachandra may be a little bewildering because we have such an emphasis in our practice of bhakti on renunciation, that bhakti results in vairagya vidya, in renunciation and knowledge. Srila Prabhupada often writes about except living on the bare necessities of life and not, Rupa Goswami writes about not over-accumulating material things, Achidhara, not over-collecting, that over-collecting is a cause of fall down. Most people in the modern world are guilty of over-collecting. Most people have more food than they can eat. There's a tremendous amount of food waste in the developed countries. Most people have more clothes than they can wear. They have clothing that they wear maybe once a year. Maybe they have clothing they don't wear at all and they still have clothing. They generally have more space than they can use. They have sections of their home. I remember having one of our neighbors when I was growing up had a room that they only used for guests when guests came. A whole living room. They only used when they had guests. They didn't actually live in it. So this is the situation. We learn often how in bhakti, one is not supposed to do that. One is supposed to live simply, simple living, high thinking. But here we read about, and this is a typical description in the Bhagavatam, how when God is there and God's devotees are there, there's great opulence. And this, again, this opulence is comparable to the descriptions in the Bhagavatam of the heavenly planets. Indeed, it says that the residents of Ayodhya look like demigods, seats made out of it. We just think about some of this opulence that's being described here. So we have in the first verse, the fact that the streets are sprinkled with perfume. Now, most modern perfume is synthetic. It's chemicals, and it may not be good for anybody, except that it makes money for the perfumery. But real perfume is costly. And there's a lot of real perfume that is becoming less and less available in Kali Yuga. It's quite interesting. So one of the things I like to do is to offer real perfume oils to my deities. So I've studied this, and for example, like frankincense. So they're being over harvested. They're not being harvested in a sustainable way. Many of the varieties of frankincense, there's at least 24 varieties of frankincense, are no longer available, or they're only available at a very high price. Sandalwood, I mean, most of the sandalwood that one buys in most of our ISKCON temples, we grind sandalwood for the deities, but I'm sure that most of you have noticed that if you get this chandan, the chandan prasad, there's basically almost no smell, and there's almost no cooling effect. That is just like this gop, ground up wood gop that's put on your forehead, but you don't feel anything from it. And that is because the sandalwood oil has already been extracted before they sell the wood. And also real sandalwood is practically not available anymore. I mean, it's just a few places in Australia, but I've dealt with a number of places that sell essential oil, and they say, we can't find genuine sandalwood. You can buy stuff from India, but it's not real. I mean, it's just like a lot of the, something that's not perfume, but just like a lot of the olive oil on the market. It says olive oil, but actually it's something else. It's soybean oil, and it has some percentage of olive oil put in it. So they're able to advertise it as olive oil, but it's just cheating. So the same as with sandalwood oil. And a guru is one of the saddest situations. The guru scent comes from a fungus that grows in aloe wood. So aloes wood, some small percentage of the aloes wood trees gets infected with this fungus. And over 5, 10, 20 years, the fungus spreads through the wood, and the fungus is highly fragrant. Very good aguru. The wood is heavy. Normally wood floats, but if there's sufficient fungus, the wood will sink. And then this fungus is extracted. And the smell of oud aguru or oud is a very strong smell. But what's happened is, again, there was harvesting without any concept of regeneration and sustainability, just exploitive harvesting. And so now actual oud is extremely difficult to get. Most aguru one gets is synthetic. And if you get genuine oud, a little bottle like this big of genuine oud is easily $200 to $500 for a little tiny bottle like this of real oud. And if we think about musk, one of the other fragrances of Chatusama, which is the fragrance of the Lord. So musk comes from the glands of the musk deer. And again, these deer have been severely hunted. And so getting real musk is in most cases even illegal. Most of the musk you buy in the market is, again, synthetic, or it's derived from plants that have some similar-ish sort of kind of smell. And used to be the musk was harvested after the deers would die. It was harvested with the himself. Today, if you get musk, there's some regulated killing of the musk deer. And again, we're talking about a little bottle of real musk is going to be $500 to $2,000 for even just a small bottle of the real musk. So imagine a society where perfume is being thrown on the streets. I mean, actual perfume is being thrown on the streets to perfume the streets. I mean, it's unimaginable. These perfumes are so potent. If you take just a drop of real musk or a drop of real oud and you offer it to your deities, your whole room will be fragrant for hours and hours and hours. Right? Or you just burn some real sandalwood, some real frankincense, some real myrrh, and again, everything is fragrant. Modern incense is, again, mostly synthetic, and it's burned on dried pig dung, actually, really, truly A lot of the modern perfumes, the modern incense actually makes you sick. Now, the real fragrances have a different effect. The real fragrances make you healthy. It's quite fascinating that like frankincense, myrrh, dragon's blood, all these various resin incense, when you burn them, they kill all the viruses, bacteria, and fungus in the room, and they make you healthy. So, just imagine that if these sort of fragrances were being burned and these sort of oils were spewed about, people wouldn't get sick. They were natural decontaminants. Not like nowadays where if we want to sterilize everything, we use rubbing alcohol or some stinky, horrible stuff like Dettol or Lysol that just like, some horrible smell. But imagine, you're burning frankincense and myrrh, and there's this divine heavenly smell, and it's killing all the molds, bacteria, and viruses in your environment. And I practically realized this. I practically applied this, gone into places that were full of mildew and mold. And after 2-3 times of burning real frankincense resin, it was gone. And it was gone. You kept the place aired out and it didn't come back. And it was completely eradicated. So this is the natural opulence. You'll notice here that it's all these descriptions of natural opulence, precious jewels. Again, today, if you want to buy a real emerald, I don't know where you get a Vidura stone. I'm not sure what a Vidura stone is, but if you want to get a real emerald, then, a small stone, again, it's going to be hundreds or thousands of dollars. And a lot of the jewels that are sold today are, again, synthetic. They're man-made, or they're artificially colored, they're artificially heated. And in the 4th canto, it's explained that Dhruva Maharaj, before boarding the Vaikuntha airplane, he decorated himself with valuable jewels. Valuable jewels have some kind of mystical effect, curative effect. And again, they make a person healthy. They mitigate the influence of bad planets. And a lot of this incense does this too. A lot of the different kinds of incense, the smoke, the essential oils, they drive out ghosts and spirits and bad influences. They clear all the negative energy from the room, and a lot of these stones do the same thing. They actually provide positive energy. Pearls, it's hardly possible today to get real pearls. In the whole United States, I think there's only 2 places that sell real pearls. And again, we're talking the cost, a tiny little pearl, $200. We were in Bahrain, where they do still find real pearls. And we saw one necklace, 3-string necklace, for $500,000, $500,000 for one pearl necklace. Most of the pearls in the world are what's called cultured pearls. That means they take a plastic bead, stick it in an oyster, and the oyster puts a little coating of nacre on it, and they call that a pearl. So, real pearls have a tremendous effect on them. All these real jewels, they have a tremendous effect on the mind. And so these opulences are lost in modern society. There's a purport where Prabhupada talks about, that these opulences are spiritual. He talks about silk and gold and jewels and fragrances, and they're actually spiritual. They have a spiritual effect. So the opulences in Sattva Gun, when we have opulence like here as compared to the demigods, when there's opulences in Sattva Gun, they actually bring one a sense of satisfaction. And interestingly enough, they bring one a sense of detachment. Isn't that fascinating? Because Sattva Gun is a sense of satisfaction and detachment, that one isn't trying to enjoy the world as the master of the world. That's one of the main qualities of Sattva Gun. Sattva Gun still has a kind of ego that, I am so detached, I'm so renounced. That's the kind of ego in Sattva Gun. Also, it's not pure. But the ego of Sattva Gun is very conducive to spiritual life. And these kind of opulences actually invoke Sattva Gun. Just like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that there's food in different modes. People eating meat, people eating especially old meat like salami and bologna, liquor that's going to influence them in tamagun. And then people eating, too many chilies, too much salt, too much sugar, too much oil. It's going to influence them in rajagun. And people eating fruits and vegetables and fresh grains and milk, it's going to influence them in sattva. And the same is true with perfume, and the same is true with incense, and the same is true with jewels, and the same is true with fabrics. The same is true with flowers. I mean, flowers also, I remember when my father, when I first joined the Hare Krishna movement, and my father would visit the temple, and he was astonished that we used real flowers. I mean, he was just like, wow, you're using real flowers. And I mean, he was just, again, completely astonished. You go to India still, when there's weddings or any big event, everything's decorated with real flowers. Even, ordinary persons. And in South India, all the women are wearing mogra and jasmine in their hair, not just ordinary persons. And something like that in the West, where we're so proud of our opulences, it would be unthinkable. I mean, imagine all the women in some big Western country wearing fresh flowers in their hair every day. Most of the decorations in the West are fake, silk flowers or plastic flowers and things like that. Prabhupada would criticize plastic jewelry. Right? And most of the jewelry in the West it's fake. People can't afford. How are you going to afford to wear emeralds and sapphires and diamonds? I think they say that to buy an engagement ring typically costs 2 to 3 months' salary. Imagine a man has to put aside 2 to 3 months' salary to buy one engagement ring for his girlfriend. So this is, we don't have this natural opulence. And of course, there is a relationship. If we don't, it's a kind of a circular relationship. This natural opulence helps invoke sattva gun, and a society that's not in sattva gun, this opulence is removed by the earth. In former times, the earth would make these jewels just available. You didn't even have to have these, you didn't have to, of course, there were mines, even in Narada Muni's time, there were mines, but you didn't have to dig miles deep and endanger people's lives, get a little bit of diamonds or a little bit of gold. So the more that one is in tune with Krishna, the more that this opulence that helps us be in tune with Krishna is available to us. I mean, we can see this in a practical way, not with things. Here we're all talking about things, but with people. The more that I'm attuned with Krishna, the more Krishna will provide me association of people that helps me become attuned with him. And the more I want to forget Krishna, the more Krishna will provide me with association that helps me forget him. We just see this practically. The more I'm in harmony with Krishna, the more facility Krishna makes for me to increase that harmony with him. Of course, sometimes, and there's exceptions, like Prahlad, who's born in a family of demons, and Vena, who's born in a family of devotees. But in general, it's like that. So the more I'm in harmony with Krishna, the more Krishna gives me facility to be in harmony with him. And the less I'm in harmony with him, the less he gives me facility to be in harmony with him. I mean, this is just practical. Just like if I'm your friend, the more that I'm your friend, the more you give me facility to act as your friend. You'll spend time with me, we'll share things together, we'll share confidences and so forth. And that increases our feeling of friendship, which then increases that facility. And the less I want to be with you, the less those things will be available. And then the less I have a feeling of friendship with you. It's just normal. So all these opulences for somebody who's in Krishna consciousness are simply acting as impetuses for service. They're not acting as bewildering factors. Just like one of the main bewildering factors the demigods pull on yogis or aspiring devotees are, beautiful heavenly women. But it can be, anything. Any kind of material opulence can be bewildering. But Prabhupada says that one should see all beautiful women as Krishna's gopis, not literally gopis. But in other words, they're all meant to be enjoyed by Krishna. Prabhupada was once meeting with some people new to Krishna consciousness, and he said to the woman, "You are a very beautiful woman. Use your beauty in Krishna's service." So this is the way that the devotees see material opulence. They see that opulence should be used in the Lord's service. And when devotees love Krishna, they want a lot of opulence to be used in his service. They want everything to be wonderful. They want temple buildings to be beautiful, to be clean. They want facility for the devotees to be beautiful and clean. Right? This is one of the anubhavs, one of the symptoms of having love for Krishna, as mentioned in the 9 stages of bhava, the stage of bhava. That attachment to places where the Lord lives. And it's explained this can mean places like Vrindavan, Mayapur, Ayodhya, and it also can mean a temple of the Lord. Frankly, it means when we make our own home a temple. And part of showing this attachment is having everything beautiful, having everything opulent. Now, in Kali Yuga, we cannot afford real pearls. And Prabhupada cautioned us that if we had real jewelry for the deities, it would attract thieves. I mean, many deities have some pieces of real jewelry. But this is what factually happened in India, is the deities were all being, this is speaking from experience, the deities were decorated with real jewels. Real diamonds and real emeralds and real pearls and real gold, and it attracted thieves. So a lot of the jewels in the British Museum were stolen from India. So Prabhupada didn't want people to be stealing from our temples, and therefore we had to make some adjustment. But the devotees, at least everything should be very nice. Right? And what happens is when we want to make everything nice for Krishna, then Krishna provides facility to make everything nice. At least do what we can in Kali Yuga so that things aren't falling apart. There's fresh paint on things. We can always put things away and not have clutter and so forth everywhere. You go to the temple in Vrindavan or Delhi or Mayapur, and they're beautiful buildings and they're kept very neatly. Everything's put away nicely. And I've been to other temples where, the book table, you can see the cardboard boxes of books under the table. And there's 5 different signs behind the table. Some of them are outdated and so forth. This is not how we worship the Lord. So again, there's this circle that when we see things that are beautifully done and clean and neat and in good repair, that it brings a higher mood. And in that higher mood, we naturally want things that are clean and neat and in good repair. So the other day we have here at the temple, we have a circular thing, used to be a fountain, and now it's planted, it's plants inside there. And then around there, the ground is covered with small, white, smooth stones, and there's some benches for sitting. But there were a lot of weeds growing there. So myself and another devotee, we were pulling the weeds. And I said to this devotee, most people won't notice consciously whether there are weeds here or not. It's not that on a conscious level they're going to notice that there's weeds. I said, and especially if there's no weeds, they're not going to notice. People tend not to notice the absence of things. I said, but if there's weeds or not, it will affect people's consciousness. And this devotee said, if there's weeds growing, will they be more likely to talk Prajalpa? And I said, definitely. You come to a place and there's no weeds and there's beautiful flowers growing and there's scented plants perfuming the atmosphere, and it changes one's consciousness, changes how one behaves. It's interesting that in sociology, they talk about the broken window syndrome. That if in a neighborhood broken windows are not fixed, then small petty crimes will increase, and gradually more severe violent crimes will also increase. Why? Because when broken windows go unrepaired, it sends a sign that nobody cares, that nobody's in charge, that nobody's managing. And we also see in the first verse today how Lord Ramachandra was personally managing the kingdom. Not only was everything opulent and conducive, but he was personally involved. Prabhupada said he was not a sleeping monarch. He made sure that everybody had occupations that were commensurate with their natures. And he made sure that they did their occupations according to the rules of scripture, the rules of Dharma, as it says in the end of this chapter. He didn't violate religious principles. So this is how each of us, as representatives of the Lord, we also should be personally attentive in our area of service. Our area of service may just be a little room in the brahmachari quarters. Or, our areas of service may be a whole temple. Our areas of service may be a whole zone or a whole planet. Sometimes our area of service is, again, just a little room. But whatever is our area of service, we should be personally attentive. But Srila Prabhupada, one time the devotees complained that something wasn't getting done properly. And the devotees said to Prabhupada, well, they're not doing it. And Prabhupada said, what is this they? He says, that is bureaucracy, they. He said, you are all they. So we shouldn't be sleeping monarchs of our kingdom, whatever our kingdom is. Maybe we're in charge of a little preaching center. Maybe we have in charge of something at work, whatever we're in charge of. And this is not just in a temple and not just our home, but even in our employment. What are we in charge of? What's our area of jurisdiction? And we should be responsible to take care of it in such a way that people will be inclined to sattva guna and be inclined to remember Krishna. We want to set up things with some beauty. Even if we have absolutely no money, we have water, unless we're living in a desert, at least we have water we can clean. And at least we can smile. We can create an opulence of attitude, right? We can create that kind of opulence. We may not create an opulence of emeralds and gold and pearls and sandalwood and a guru and that kind of thing, but we can create an opulence of our mood. It's interesting. Thank you for my breakfast. It was interesting. I'm part of a little group of devotees. We were doing some service, and one member of the group kept derailing the group by complaining about everything and anything, especially ISKCON leadership. Just constantly complaining. We had a meeting yesterday. It was only a half an hour meeting. For like the first 15 to 20 minutes, he was just complaining, and finally, he finally left the meeting. And thank you, Krishna, left the group. But instead of helping all of us think of Krishna, he was helping all of us forget Krishna. He was just so full of anger and frustration that he was polluting the atmosphere. So wherever atmosphere we're in, we should be purifying the atmosphere. Maybe we can't do it with emeralds, maybe we can't do it with pearls, maybe we can't do it with real frankincense and real guru, but we can do it with our consciousness. And actually, that's even more powerful. Tirthapad is a name for a great devotee because wherever they put their feet becomes a tirtha, becomes a holy place. When we think about Srila Prabhupada came out of India in a materially poverty-stricken condition. He didn't have pearls and emeralds and a guru, and he couldn't come and sprinkle the roads with perfume. He didn't have that kind of opulence, but he had the opulence of Krishna prema. He was radiating Krishna prema. And so as soon as you came in his presence, you immediately felt purified. I remember when we first met Srila Prabhupada in 1974, so I was initiated through the mail before I met Srila Prabhupada. And my husband had met Prabhupada previously when my husband was a brahmachari. But this was the first time I was meeting Srila Prabhupada when he came for the Chicago Rath Yatra. So my husband and my father, who had come for the Rath Yatra, and myself, we went to meet Srila Prabhupada in his room. And we were there 20, 30 minutes. And we had a very nice conversation, mostly conversation between my father and Srila Prabhupada. I didn't say anything. It was a very sweet conversation. And when we left Prabhupada's room, my father looked at me and said, "Now I know why you've come to this movement. This is a genuine holy man." And I didn't ask my father at the time what made him say that. I guess I didn't want to risk shaking his feelings. But I wondered, why did he say that? What was it about Srila Prabhupada, 20, 30 minutes being with him, that would cause him to say that? I mean, in many ways, the things that Srila Prabhupada said in that conversation were extremely profound, but they were fairly simple things at the same time. And I never did ask my father why he said that. But what my own conclusion is that when a person is saturated with love of God, you feel that in their presence. Therefore we say that the physical body of a devotee is not material. It doesn't act materially. There are so many instances in the Catholic traditions where after a saint passes away, and wherever they're buried, people will touch the body and become healed, and so forth and so on. So anyway, we can make opulence like that. And our renunciation is not supposed to be, actually, Rupa Goswami says that vairagya is not an anga of bhakti, and that we are interested in yukta vairagya. So it is not that we want to shun neatness and cleanness and beauty, but that we want to use them as an impetus for Krishna service and as evidence of Krishna service. And that makes everything auspicious. So we have about 7 minutes. If anybody has questions or comments. I know this is also being live streamed, so maybe some of the questions are coming from YouTube or other places, and someone can put them in the chat. How do we use our personal beauty in Krishna service? Well, beauty is very attractive. Also, people tend to trust someone who's beautiful. There's a lot of studies that show that beautiful people, and tall people, by the way, are more trusted and make more money. So you can use your beauty as a preaching tool. If you're very beautiful and you preach, people will listen to you more and they'll believe you more. That's a fact. That's just a sociological fact. Anybody else have a question?
Hare Krishna, this is Anjanika. I just have an appreciation. I mean, I find it so beautiful that you touched upon how devotee is so detail oriented, and that we can recognize how everything we do carries an energetical reaction. As you mentioned about the weeds, even though people may not notice their absence, they will feel the difference when
Yes.
they are not there. I find this is a beautiful reminder that actually all of these things, even though they may not be so grossly visible or felt, they are still affecting others. And so it's that further responsibility that we have to take as spiritual warriors. So thank you so much. I find that to be so beautiful, especially as you mentioned that broken window syndrome, and essentially voiced all those things that somehow we consciously know, we're not really aware of high intelligence. So thank you so much for bringing those points up.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody else? We could take one more comment or question. Here we have
Urmila Davidasi. Prabhu. I was actually wondering with the idea of when you were explaining about all the things that are not available now because of how, as human beings, we've exploited the earth. I just wonder if then it would be relevant to think of environmental protection as devotional service, in the sense of that if we are taking care of the environment of Mother Earth, of Bhumi, then we're able to have those opulent things to be able to offer to the Lord, or if that's even something that is just going
Yes.
on.
Well, almost anything can be done in any of the three modes or in bhakti. I mean, there's some things you can't do in bhakti. You can't run a liquor store, or, you can't be head of the mafia for bhakti, in bhakti. Sorry, doesn't work. You can't be, a mafia hitman in bhakti. Sorry if that was weird aspiration. But other than things like that, anything can be done in any way. So one could become an environmentalist in the mode of ignorance, just out of anger and criticism. We're gonna destroy all of those polluters, and you could be an environmentalist in the mode of passion, in Rajagun. We are righteous people, and we're gonna save the earth, and I'm gonna put my statue in the park. And you could be an environmentalist in Sattvagun, that we're gonna save the earth because it's all earth, and we're part of the whole ecosystem, and duty to save the earth, as that's our part of the universe. And you could be an environmentalist for Krishna. And so one of the 7 purposes of ISKCON is to bring the members closer together, to train them how to live a more natural life. And just like in so many of our temples, we have Radha Krishna deities, and we decorate the deity of Srimati Radharani. That's also our service to Krishna. And there are devotees who have that as their eternal service in the spiritual world, decorating Radharani, decorating the gopis, so Krishna can enjoy them. And I'm sure absolutely that's true in Dwarka also, decorating Krishna's queens. I'm sure, absolutely, no doubt about it, that there's thousands of maidservants who clean the room of the queens and decorate them. So Bhumi is one of Krishna's queens. If we were doing like that, and Krishna's very pleased. Yes, and Krishna wants his queen to be beautiful, and she wants us to be able to have real aguru and real sandalwood and organic vegetables and real grains. And it's not that Bhumi likes all these climactic disturbances and all these pandemic viruses, and it's not that she likes that. We wouldn't even have this COVID-19 if the world was vegetarian. It wouldn't even exist. Wouldn't have it. If people were burning frankincense and myrrh and camphor, and there was a guru sprinkled on the streets, and people were vegetarian, we wouldn't have these diseases. So, yeah. And we have the last question here in the chat. How can we express our concerns, still make others remember Krishna instead of disturbing their minds? Take responsibility. The main thing we're supposed to do is take responsibility in our area of service. And if it's not our area of service, we should leave it alone. If we're disturbing others' minds, we're probably not doing service. As Krishna says, of one who's not disturbed by others and who does not cause disturbance to others. One should not be a source of anxiety to others by their body, mind, and words. So if we're acting as a source of anxiety to others, we're probably not doing bhakti. We're probably in Rajagun, or more likely in Tamaka. Thank you very much. Prabhupada ki jai.